In 2014, a woman with no medical degree convinced some of the smartest investors in Silicon Valley to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into a company that couldn't do the one thing it claimed it could do. She didn't hack the system. She didn't bend the truth. She built an empire on something that never worked, not once. And for over a decade, almost no one asked the right questions. Her name was Elizabeth Holmes. The company was Theranos. And this is the story of how a blood testing startup became a billion-dollar fraud that fooled generals, cabinet secretaries, and billionaires before it all came crashing down. But here's the thing. This isn't just about one woman lying. It is about how easy it is to sell a vision when no one wants to admit they don't understand the science. Let's go back to 2003. Elizabeth Holmes is 19 years old, a sophomore at Stanford, studying chemical engineering. She drops out, not because she's failing, because she says she has an idea that will change medicine forever. She wants to run hundreds of diagnostic tests on a single drop of blood. No needles, no vials, just a finger prick and a small black box she calls the Edison. The pitch was perfect. Americans hate needles. Blood draws are expensive. Lab results take days. And worst of all, people with serious conditions often don't get tested because the process is too invasive or inconvenient. Holmes said her technology would make blood testing faster, cheaper, and painless. She said it would save lives. Investors ate it up. By 2004, Theranos had raised $6 million. By 2010, it had raised $90 million. By 2014, the company was valued at $9 billion. Elizabeth Holmes owned half of it. On paper, she was the youngest self-made female billionaire in history. She wore black turtlenecks like Steve Jobs. She spoke in an unnaturally deep voice. She never blinked. She gave TED Talks about democratizing healthcare. The media called her the next Steve Jobs. Fortune put her on the cover. Presidents invited her to summits. And the whole time, the technology didn't work. Let's pause here and talk about what Theranos actually claimed to do. Because this is where the story gets uncomfortable. Traditional blood tests require between 3 and 10 milliliters of blood. That's about 2 teaspoons. Labs use that blood to run chemistry panels, check cholesterol, measure hormone levels, screen for diseases. It works because there's enough volume to separate plasma, dilute samples, and run multiple tests with accuracy. Theranos said it could do all of that with just a few drops. 100 microliters. That's less than the amount of blood you'd get from a finger prick at a pharmacy. They said their Edison machines could run over 100 tests from that tiny sample. And they said the results would come back in hours, not days, at a fraction of the cost. If it worked, it would have been revolutionary. The problem is basic biology, and chemistry made it almost impossible. You can't dilute a sample that small without losing accuracy. You can't avoid contamination. You can't run that many different assays on such limited material without the noise drowning out the signal. Every lab scientist knew this, but Theranos said they'd cracked it. Proprietary technology, trade secrets, too complex to explain. And that's the move. When you can't show your work, you sell the dream. By 2013, Theranos had partnerships with Walgreens and Safeway. They opened wellness centers inside pharmacies where customers could walk in, get their finger pricked, and receive test results on their phones. It looked legitimate. It felt legitimate. Except behind the scenes, the company was in chaos. Employees who questioned the accuracy of the Edison machines were fired. Engineers who raised concerns about false positives were silenced. The devices failed so often that Theranos started secretly running the majority of its tests on traditional blood analyzers made by Siemens. They'd take the finger prick samples, dilute them heavily, and run them through machines you could buy off the shelf. Then they'd send the results back as if the Edison had done the work. Patients started noticing something was off. Test results didn't match what their doctors were seeing. A woman got a false positive for HIV. Another was told she was miscarrying when she wasn't. People were making medical decisions based on data that wasn't reliable. And Theranos kept expanding. The company had a board stacked with famous names. George Shultz, former Secretary of State. Henry Kissinger. James Mattis, a 4-star general who would later become Secretary of Defense. These weren't tech investors. They were establishment figures with zero background in medical diagnostics. But their presence sent a signal. If people like this believed in Theranos, it must be real. Except none of them had seen the data. None of them had toured the labs. None of them understood the science. They believed in Elizabeth Holmes, and she was very, very good at making people believe. Here's where it gets stranger. One of the board members, George Shultz, had a grandson named Tyler. Tyler was a Stanford biology graduate who went to work at Theranos in 2013. Within months, he realized something was wrong. The tests were unreliable. The data didn't make sense. The company was lying to investors and patients. So Tyler went to his grandfather. one of the most powerful men in the country, someone who could have stopped this with a single phone call. And George Shultz didn't believe him. He believed Elizabeth Holmes instead. The family fractured. Tyler left the company and eventually became a whistleblower. But it took years. This is the psychology of the con. Once you've invested your credibility, your reputation, your money, admitting you were wrong becomes existential. So you double down. You defend the lie because the alternative is too painful. And that's what everyone around Theranos was doing. Investors didn't want to admit they'd been fooled. Board members didn't want to look naive. Walgreens didn't want to pull out of a partnership they'd publicly championed. So the lie kept growing. In 2015, a reporter named John Carrero published an investigation in the Wall Street Journal. He had spoken to former employees. He had reviewed internal documents. He had proof that Theranos was using commercial machines for most of its testing, and that its proprietary devices were wildly inaccurate. Elizabeth Holmes went on CNBC and called the story a tabloid hit piece. She said Carrero had a vendetta. She said the science was sound and that critics didn't understand what Theranos had built. For a moment, it almost worked. Some investors still believed her. Some media outlets stayed on her side. But the dam had cracked. Regulatory agencies started investigating. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services inspected the labs and found catastrophic deficiencies. Theranos was banned from operating blood labs for 2 years. Walgreens and Safeway terminated their partnerships. Investors who had once valued the company at $9 billion now valued it at nothing. By 2016, Forbes revised Elizabeth Holmes' net worth from $4.5 billion to zero. By 2018, the company had dissolved. Holmes and her business partner, Ramesh Balwani, were charged with massive fraud. In 2022, she was convicted on 4 counts and sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison. So what do we actually take from this? Because it's easy to look at Theranos and say it was just one bad actor, one narcissist who got lucky. But that's not quite right. Theranos worked because it gave people what they wanted to believe. Investors wanted the next Apple. The media wanted a female Steve Jobs. Patients wanted easier healthcare. And no one wanted to be the person who didn't get it. The emperor's new clothes didn't disappear because someone finally said they were naked. They disappeared because the illusion became too expensive to maintain. The uncomfortable truth is this. In a world where complexity is increasing and expertise is harder to verify, we're all vulnerable to this. We outsource our skepticism to credentials, to confidence, to the approval of people we think are smarter than us. And sometimes, those people are just as lost as we are. Theranos raised over $700 million. It convinced some of the most powerful people in the world that it had solved the problem no one else could solve. And not one of them asked to see the machine work. That's not just fraud. That's a systems failure. And it raises a question we still don't have a good answer to. If it happened once, what's stopping it from happening